I get people that ask me questions on social media about some of the ways that I invest. And so I wanted to go over a question that I recently got. And I thought that it might be helpful just to make a video and send it to the individual that sent it to me. So this message was sent to me by a guy named Reed. He says, "Hey Shiloh, thank you for offering to let me pick your brain. I really appreciate it. I'm really interested in how you combine lease options with 1031 exchanges to grow so quickly." So let me explain how I do that or why I do that. If you don't know what a 1031 exchange is, a 1031 exchange is basically when I go to sell a property, rather than having that money come to me and go into my bank account, which then would trigger a taxable event because I sold an asset, I had a gain, which is often called a capital gain, whether it's a short term, which is less than 12 months, or a long term, which is over 12 months. Basically, I had a gain on that investment, and according to the government, I need to pay taxes on the gain that I received. Well, rather than doing it that way and needing to pay taxes on that gain, I can delay my taxes on that gain and invest what I would have had to pay taxes in. And I can do it under the 1031 section of the tax code. And this is basically what it means. I can sell an asset, and then rather than receiving that money to come to my account and needing to pay taxes on it, I can divert that money to somewhere else, not me. Usually it's a 1031 specialist. And so I got a guy down in Florida. His name is Dave Foster. He's a great guy, and he does all my 1031 exchanges. Anyway, I'll give him a call and I say, "Hey, I'm looking to sell a property and I want to do a 1031 exchange with it." So he says, "Okay, fill out this paperwork." I do so. And then I'll sell the property, and then rather than the profits coming to me, the profits will go to him, and they're stored in a bank account, and then they're stored for a certain period of time. I really have to redeploy those funds quickly, and there's certain time frames that you need to follow in order to be able to do this correctly. And at this very moment, as I'm making this video, I don't remember all of the time frames. I think you have to identify like 3 different options for an investment within, I think, a 40 to 5 day period, and then you have to close on at least one of those within another 45 days. Don't quote me on the time frames. You can easily look that up and figure it out yourself. But this is the point. You have these time frames that you have to follow. And if you don't follow them, then it kind of voids the 1031 exchange. Then you have to pay taxes. So go ahead and follow through with that correctly so that you can delay the taxes. It isn't that you're going to get rid of the taxes altogether. You're just delaying them. So the reason that I'm able to do this so well is because I have a lot of deal flow. I get about 100 deals to my inbox every day from wholesalers saying, "Hey, you should buy this deal, you should buy that deal." And out of all of the hundreds that I get, usually it's about maybe 1 or 2 per week that I think, "Oh, this would be a really good deal." But because I have deal flow, it's easy for me to do a 1031 exchange because I can store that money there for just a short period of time before I want to redeploy it. And the reason that combining a lease option with a 1031 exchange is so great is because I have a pretty good idea of when I'm going to sell the property. I give my tenants up to 3 years to exercise the option, and they're supposed to notify me within, I think it's either 60 or 90 days that they intend to exercise the option. And it isn't that they just call me up on the phone saying, "Hey, I'm going to, exercise it." They have to send me an actual letter certified in the mail saying that they intend to exercise the option. And why do I do it that way? I do it that way because anybody can say, "Yeah, I want to exercise the option." But when they're serious about it, they actually write me a letter saying that they intend to exercise the option within the next 30 or 60 days. And then they send it to me in the mail. And doing that whole process shows me that they're really actually interested in doing it. So when I get the letter in the mail, I'm able to call up my buddy Dave and I say, "Hey Dave, I got this property that's probably going to close within the next 60 days. Can we set up the 1031 exchange?" He says yes, and then he emails the paperwork to the title company, and then we get everything going. And then when it's time to close, it closes, the debt gets paid off, and then the profits go to Dave. And he puts that money into the account that is set aside for my money so that I can reuse that money rather than taking a gain and needing to pay the tax. So imagine the scenario. Imagine I purchased a property for $200,000. I spent $30,000 into fixing it up, and now it's worth $300,000, and by doing the lease option, I don't sell it for just 300. I sell it for 330 within a 3-year period of time, because I'm putting in an extra 10% because I'm valuing it based on what future value would likely be. And if you add 3% to a property per year, which is pretty conservative, you get a 10% increase in what you're going to sell the property for. So they're living in the property for the next couple of years, and they buy it at 330. Now again, remember, my total in was 230. I'm selling it for 330, so that's a $100,000 gain. Well, let's say I just received the gain and then I need to pay taxes on that gain. I may pay anywhere between maybe $20,000 to maybe $30,000 or even $40,000 in taxes, depending on my tax rate, depending on where I live, and things like that. So rather than having $20,000 to $40,000 just disappear through taxes, if I do the 1031 exchange, I can reinvest that whole $100,000 into more properties, which is fantastic, because what that means is that 20 to 40,000 that I'm able to put to work can create a ton more money for me. So if I can delay needing to pay taxes until a later point in time, I will absolutely do that. And when I sell that next property, I can do another 1031 exchange, and I can continue to delay paying those taxes. Now, this is another thing that's really cool. With $30,000, I can do an entirely new deal. So I put $30,000 into a deal, and that deal will make me, let's just say, $60,000. So I now doubled it. So with that money that would have gone to the government, I'm able to take that and redeploy it. And basically, I got a whole new house that made me another $60,000. Now, I need to pay taxes on that $60,000. And yes, I need to pay that $30,000 to the government at some point. But I was able to use that $30,000 in a non-interest bearing loan, basically from the government, in order to reinvest it. It is awesome. Now, let's say I do this over and over and over again, and I get older and older and older, and I pass away. I actually will never need to pay those taxes. And my kids will inherit the properties, and now they have what's called a step up in basis, which means it basically wipes out all the taxes that I was responsible for paying because I'm dead. So I don't have to pay it anymore. So when I do a lease option and I have a pretty good idea of when I'm going to sell the property and I have good deal flow, it's a great combination of how to grow wealth pretty quickly. All right, let's keep going with some of the questions that Reed has. So he says, how do you usually find reliable tenant buyers for lease options? So that's a really good question. This is how I find my lease option buyers. Basically 3 ways of marketing it. I have a website, which is arizonaleaseoptions.com. And people can go on there. I direct people to go on there so that they can see the lease option properties that I have available. I direct people to go on there through either advertising on Zillow. I just do a for sale by owner on Zillow, or I go into the rent section and then I'll put down there a little advertisement that says, this is not a regular rental, this is a rent to own only. So if you want to become a homeowner and own your own home, then this may be a great opportunity for you. Go ahead and reach out to me. I help dozens of people become homeowners, and I can help you become a homeowner too. So I'll have people find me through Zillow. I also post it on Facebook groups. I find that is a really good way of posting these lease option properties, because you can post it in groups that are specific for a certain area. So you're really targeting people in that area, which is great. And then the third way I do it is through yard signs. That's right. That may seem weird, but I put signs in the yard that says, hey, we're selling this property as a rent to own. Go ahead and give me a call. And I get a lot of people calling me just from the road signs. So I would say that's probably the best of all the things that I do. So that's how I find the tenant buyers for my lease options. But there's another thing that really helps get the right person. And what it is it's charging that option fee. Usually I'll charge an option fee of $3,900 or $4,900, sometimes a little bit more if it's a more expensive property. And so if somebody has to come in with like $8,000 with the option fee plus a security deposit plus 1 month's rent, which sometimes can be upwards of $7,000 to $8,000, if they're coming in to put all of that money down in order to get into the property, it tells me that there's somebody that has access to money. And that's a big deal, because if you have somebody say, hey, is it okay if I break the option fee up into, different payments over the next couple months, that person will likely not exercise the option. Because if they can't come up with, $5,000 to $10,000 right now in order to get into the property, when it comes time to actually purchase the property, what makes you think that they're going to all of a sudden have more money at that point? They may, but if they can't come up with it now, the likelihood is they're not going to be able to come up with $5,000 or $10,000 later on, and they will likely be more of a renter's mindset, which is, hey, this thing broke, I want you to come and I want you to fix it for me, which is completely opposite of the way that we set up our lease options. We tell the tenant buyers very clearly that, hey, this is to help you get into a home, so I want you to treat it as if it were your home, which means that if something breaks, then you fix it. It means that if there's something going on with the plumbing, then you fix it. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm an extremist here. If the plumbing is shot, then I'm going to come in and I'm going to fix that, because that's something that should have been fixed before they moved in. And usually if there's something that's structurally not sound with the house, I make sure that works before I bring in a tenant buyer. But if it's like something got clogged or something like that, then I have them go and I have them fix it, because they clogged it, they'll fix it. And if you owned the home, then you'd be fixing it anyways. And if they come to me and say, hey, well, I'm just a renter, you really should take care of this, then I remind, well, wait a second. Are you just a renter? Because I didn't rent this place to just a renter. I rented this place to a tenant buyer, somebody who didn't want to just be a renter, who wanted to actually purchase the home. So are you still wanting to purchase the home? Because if you do, then this is what's going to be expected of you when you purchase the home. But if you just want to be a renter, then this may not work out as well. So yeah, I can come in and I can take care of all of those things. But when it comes time to purchase the property, then all of those costs that I just brought in, I'm going to be putting at the back end so that I recoup all of that money that I spent fixing up what now is going to be your home. And so I explain it to them when I'm talking with them about it at the very beginning. When they're signing the documents, I explain how it works very clearly so they understand. And when it's explained really well, they tend to take really good care of the property, and it's a very easily managed property for me. That's how I get that set up, and that's how I find good tenants. It's through the advertising and then through the option fee. When they need to come up with so much money in order to get into the property, that's one of the ways that I'm able to kind of sift through who is more likely going to be a good tenant and who is more likely not going to be a good tenant. And by the way, one of the things that's so great about having that option fee is if they turn out to not be a good tenant and they decide that, well, this isn't working for me, I'm just going to leave. And let's say they kind of trash the place on their way out. Well, they gave me, $4,000 or $5,000 up front. With that $4,000 or $5,000, I'm likely going to be able to go and turn the property over pretty well, and maybe put in new carpet, do new painting and things like that. And then when I have the next person that comes in as a tenant buyer and they pay me a new option fee of $4,000 or $5,000, that reimburses the money that I had to just lay out there in order to get the property ready again. So anyway, that's what I do in order to find a tenant buyer. Next question. What terms do you set for the option, like deposits, rent credits, and purchase price? So this is how I set up the lease option. I can set them up 3 different ways, okay? The normal way of setting up the lease option, so I buy the property for $200,000, I put $30,000 into fixing it up, now it's worth $300,000. I will just increase the price by about 10%. And they can purchase the property anytime within the next 3 years for $330,000. So that's kind of how I set the price. I also let them know that none of the money that they pay for rent is actually going to go towards purchasing the property. Now, some people may say, well, why would anybody want to do that then? Why would somebody just be willing to pay rent and they pay this option fee when the rent is not going to be going towards the purchase of the property? That just doesn't make sense. Well, it does make sense because they have this option to purchase the property. Nobody else is going to be able to buy that property within that time frame. They have an exclusive right to purchase that property, which also means that I can't just tell them, hey, you guys need to move out, I'm going to sell the property. And that's why people are interested in the lease option, because they want to be able to move into a place where they're not going to be told that they have to leave because the owner wants to sell the property. They can kind of set up shop, feel really comfortable, really kind of create this home environment for them. And they don't have to worry about moving out because I decide I want to sell the property. A lot of people will pay good money for that feeling of security. I don't have to worry about moving out. And they're able to buy the property for a specified amount of money within a specified amount of time. So they're working towards that goal. So that's kind of how I set up the lease option. Now, I also have two other ways that I will set up the lease option. One is called a floating lease option. And that option strike price, the price in which they will buy the property, that will actually increase over time. So what does that look like? Well, I'll say, look, I can sell you the property for $330,000 within the next 3 years, or what it appraises for, whichever's higher. Now, this helps protect me from hyperinflation. If prices go way up, like they did back in 2020 and 2021, and I was selling properties for like $100,000 below market value because prices went up so much, if prices were to go up really quick, then I don't lose out on all of that gain. Now you might think, well, why does this benefit the tenant buyer at all? So this is what I say. I will sell it to you for $330,000 or what it appraises for, whichever is higher. And I will take the amount of money that you gave me as the option fee, and I will bring that back to help you pay for any of the closing costs. So now they're feeling like, okay, well, this is pretty good. That money that I gave you can be used in order to help me with the purchase of the property. It's not a credit. I'm just helping them pay for closing costs, maybe rate pay down or things like that. So that's a floating lease option. The other one is what's called a declining lease option. And that looks similar to seller financing. And so like, let's say somebody brings in a big option fee. So they're paying me like 10% of the value of the home. So what I'll do in that situation is rather than selling it to them at $330,000, I'll say, hey, look, if you bring in $30,000, then I'll take the $300,000 of what the property is valued at today, and I will let you buy that property for $270,000. And you can buy it for that price for the next year. You can buy it for $268,000 for the following year and $266,000 the year after. So I'm going to have the strike price go down by a couple of grand each year. I want to make it very clear that you're not building equity in this property at all. You have no equity in this property. This property is mine. It remains in my name. It doesn't switch over to your name. It remains in my name. But you have an exclusive right to buy the property for $270,000, and then the following year $268,000, and the following year $266,000. So you've not built any equity. I'm just lowering the strike price by which you can buy the property. And the last part of that is the security deposit that they gave me at the beginning. I bring that back to them when they go to purchase the home, and that helps them also pay for their closing costs and things like that. So the next question, what happens if the tenant buyer doesn't end up purchasing? Well, that's okay. In fact, that actually happens quite a bit. I think the average is 15% of people actually exercise the option. With me, I think it's more like 30, and I'm doing some things right now in order to connect people with mortgage loan officers quicker in the process so that they can work towards getting themselves ready to purchase the property, because I'd like that number to go up to about 50%. So I'm not going to force somebody to buy the property, but I've given them an option to buy it. They don't have to buy it, but they have an option to buy it. And if they exercise the option, great, they're able to purchase the home. And if they decide, you know what, we thought we were going to do it, but it turns out that, we're going to move, and so I don't think this is going to work out, that's okay. Thanks for taking great care of the property. Really appreciate it. I'll give you a good reference to the next place that you're moving to. And then after they move out, I have different options that I can choose. I can decide to bring in another tenant buyer into the property, or I can put the property on the market and just sell it, or I can turn it into a rental. I can do a lot of things with that property because now they no longer have the right to purchase the property. Next question, what makes a property a good fit for this strategy? This is what I would say to that. If it's a small property, most people don't think of the small property as their dream home. And you don't have to do it with like really big properties. But for me, I like to get either 3 or 4 bedroom properties because people usually think of, I'm going to have a family, and so I want to have a home where I can raise my kids and they need bedrooms. If you do like a 2-bedroom home, that's harder to do a lease option with because most people think, well, I want to have a bigger home for my family. Now, some older people might decide, we don't have any kids, and so I'm happy to do a lease option with a 2-bedroom home. But I would say that 3 or 4 bedroom homes between 1,200 and 1,800 square feet is probably a good fit for a lease option property. You also don't want to buy it in really run down bad areas, because you're going to have a harder time finding somebody that says, hey, I really want to have a home in this area, and them not be also a criminal. If they're going to be in crime-ridden areas, they also may be a criminal. And if they're a criminal, they may not pay you, because sometimes criminals don't pay you. So I would say choose an area, maybe a C plus to B minus area. Have it be a 3 or 4 bedroom home. That's what I usually choose when I'm looking for a property that's going to be good for a lease option. Next question. How do you plan your 1031 exchanges? As in, do you always have your next deals lined up? Well, I kind of already explained this. Because I have so much deal flow, it's really easy for me to do a 1031 exchange, because I'll know when the property's selling. I contact my guy, Dave Foster, and then he sends the paperwork to the title company. They get that ready. Then I have 45 days to make a choice as to which of the deals that are coming to me I think would be the best for me to do another lease option. So basically, I don't have the specific deal lined up most of the time, but I have deal flow lined up. So I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be able to buy a property within the next 45 to 90 days that's going to work out well as a lease option. Next question. Are there any pitfalls to watch out for that you wish you had known early on? I would say yes. I am finding that out right now. I'm in the Arizona market, and properties in Arizona are taking longer to sell, and people are having a hard time being able to qualify for loans. So I have these tenant buyers, and some of them are having a hard time because the economy's slowed down. I had one guy who was looking to exercise the option in the fall, and he called me and said, hey man, we got to move out because, I lost my job. We're needing to move back in with family. And it was sad because I wanted to help him get into this home, but because he now doesn't have a source of income, his ability to qualify for a loan has now gone away. So it is sad, but he contacted me. He left the house pretty nice, and he's moved back in with his parents. So again, sad, but it's understandable. And what's great about this is because he didn't buy the house and put all that money down, and he doesn't have to sell the house in this market, which is difficult to sell, and then he loses all of that down payment that he put in there through like realtor fees and closing costs and things like that. So he's really only out $4,000, whereas he could have been out maybe $15,000 or $20,000. So the option is just an option to purchase or not. And for him, it actually worked out better that he didn't purchase the home like as a regular purchase, because he would have lost a lot of money needing to sell it when he moved back in with his parents. So hopefully this video was helpful in explaining a little bit about how lease options and 1031 exchanges can work really, really well together. And hopefully I was able to kind of go into some lease option strategies for you and you liked it. If you did like it, if you want to learn more about investing in real estate, then connect with me. I run some awesome investor retreats out of my properties out in Costa Rica, where people that are new that want to learn how to invest or how to do lease options, they come, and it's more like a workshop where we have our computers out and I show you how to find a property. Hey, you're looking for a property out in Illinois, this is exactly how I would do it. And then I show you how to do it. I show you how to connect with the people that are going to help you in that process, how to find money, how to do all of the things that you need to do in order to become a successful real estate investor. So if that's you, if you're interested in that, go ahead and reach out to me. These retreats are super affordable, and we combine them with doing awesome excursions in a beautiful country. So it's definitely worth coming to. So go ahead and reach out to me and learn how to invest and have a great time. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day.